I spoke a lot today. Don't do that.
But is it not better if they do it in writing? Because
You want to?
Raising hands.
okay.
Raising hands.
Okay, so the differential diagnosis of lobar holoprosencephaly includes A. Septo-optic dysplasia, B. Agenesis of the septum pellucidum, C. Severe ventriculomegaly, D. Agenesis of the corpus callosum, E. A, B, C are correct, or F. All the answers are correct.
Second row. Who you may consult.
Can I change my place?
Halas, Arabi.
So, who is going for A? Raise your hand.
You are not very collaborative today.
So, there is a hand raised.
B. Now, what's the answer?
A.
It could be.
No, E.
It could be.
Some are saying E, some are saying F. Let people discuss why F.
Why? Okay. Why? I should tell you why is not D. Because against corpus callosum may be present, but it's not part of the differential diagnosis. So the answer should be
Septo.
no. Something is wrong. Paulina.
But it is.
No. Wait.
All over again.
This was last slide, probably.
All over again. Let's. He's not willing to. Let me see from here. We start again.
So you get a second chance. So,
No, it's really E because I pushed twice. Okay, it was very rare. Huh?
so the correct answer is E, which means that these three conditions, septo-optic dysplasia, agenesis of the septum pellucidum, but severe ventriculomegaly.
It's again because she's not here. We have now a case. If you have disruption,
So it should be
It should have-
really a
you should have
rupture.
you should have disruption of the septum with severe ventriculomegaly. It'll be quite difficult.
Mimicking.
We-
Can you say a few words why it's not agenesis of corpus callosum? That the one who opted for the
Because agenesis of the corpus callosum is agenesis of the corpus callosum. The lateral ventricles are usually separate one from the other. There is the contrary. They are not communicated. They are separated. You may have lower holoprosencephaly, or you may have septoptical dysplasia with dysgenesis of the corpus callosum. But corpus callosum is not part of the DD. It's part of the disease, but it's not part of the D between them. And severe ventriculomegaly, we published a paper years ago in 2001, 2002, doing the differential diagnosis between holoprosencephaly and severe ventriculomegaly. It's quite difficult to differentiate between rupture of the septum or an anomaly of the septum.
and the case of bleeding we showed today was a case like this.
As an example, yes.
Okay, we proceed to the next one. To differentiate between lobar holoprosencephaly and other condition, the examination needs to A detailed examination of non-CNS structures, B, coronal planes at the level of the frontal lobes, C, sagittal planes of the midline, D, failure to visualize the corpus callosum, and E, all the answers are incorrect.
You are very clever. You are very clever.
We got the hint from the organizers.
Oh yes. Oh, at this you were, and in this part of the lecture you were not sleeping.
Can we start with the answer?
Yes, it's good, eh? So that at least it's.
But you said today, if you want to see this one, you check from the front to see if they are fused, the frontal lobes.
Yes.
In this, yeah. In
So the coronal planes are the deep planes. Yes. You were not sleeping in this particular part of the.
Yeah, it was lecturing.
Okay, question number 3. In patients with less severe form of holoprosencephaly, the risk to have an affected relatives. No, but what is this?
Don't touch the computer.
The
But
computer.
it goes on itself.
Someone here have
Okay, now
Don't touch.
patient with.
Not toque button. Not toque
But
button.
I didn't touch anything. It goes by
No,
itself.
if you took.
Okay. You have to, the risk to have an affected relatives, A, is usually increased for the parents but not for other relatives. B, is usually increased for other relatives but not for the. This is very complicated. You see that it goes by itself, right?
It's very bad.
You know, I think they are very cerebrotic questions.
I have a suggestion. Don't go for the projection. No, don't go for the projection because I think this is a problem.
Yes.
Go
that-
for without projection.
Ah, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't see, it's too small to be seen.
Really? We have camera.
Come on. Oh, come on.
You can use in the
No.
view.
No.
You?
Go ahead with the-
You should fit to window. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
Now you forgot the answer. Again.
In patients with less severe form of holoprosencephaly, the risk to have an affected relative A. What's happening?
No, she knows the answer. There is something in they're going one to the other automatically. Yes.
After 22 seconds.
Yes. Now it's okay. Okay. Now we're okay. So I am going to present my apologies to Katia. Sorry
For accusing
for
me
accusing
to put
you.
my
Yes,
thing.
yes, exactly.
Is usually increased for the parents but not for other relatives. Is usually increased for other relatives but not for the parents. Both the parents and other relatives are at increased risk to suffer from holoprosencephaly. The risk in both situations is the same. Holoprosencephaly represents almost always a new mutation.
I would also see. no?
Yeah, why not see? Why not see?
I don't know.
What? No.
Because maybe the parents.
No, show the answer.
No, the answer is
Hey, you say they, but
Why not see?
yes,
No,
because
it's Go
yeah.
back. I want to see.
Don't look at the answer. The answer.
No, it's no. It's the question is A. In patients with least severe form of holoprosencephaly, the risk to have an affected relative is usually increased for the parents but not for the relative, because they have the possibility to reproduce. If there is more severe forms of holoprosencephaly, usually the chances that one of the relatives is sick are bigger because the parent should be normal. You understand? If it's a less severe form, probably one of the parents is affected. As I showed the case with the dysmorphic man, okay, or of the woman with the single incisor.
The one working
the
at the-
brother of the mother is also likely to have.
Exactly, because I mean maybe if it's a less severe form, it's likely that the parents have it, and maybe also the grandparents.
If the father is working in a gas station, his brother can work in a gas station.
Exactly.
No,
It was in actual.
it's usually increased for the parent.
It
but
was the gas station of the grandfather.
So
Anyway, so next one.
The guy that worked in the guy that worked in the workstation was one with a genesis of corpus callosum. It's not this one.
So this one is very easy.
It's a,
Holoprosencephaly is most commonly associated with A. Trisomy 13, trisomy 18, trisomy 21, monosomy X of chromosomal deletions and duplication. A. Very good.
I didn't drink.
The life expectancy of children with atypical holoprosencephaly is low. True or false? False.
You can even get into
You can even ignore of having it. So it's at 14 weeks of gestation, the choroid plexus fills the whole ventricle, only the anterior horn and the atrium, only the posterior horn and the atrium. All the answers correct, all the answers incorrect.
Usually.
Yeah. I would say
all the way.
At 14 weeks. Yeah? Usually. Who says A? B? C? Very good.
well, this proves that not even the one who made the questions knows the answer. So
I make a correction, I put usually. Usually.
We love ultrasound.
What is the answer? What is it?
Can you come back?
All the answers incorrect.
Gustavo.
that's what you
No,
wrote.
sure. It's not. It didn't feel the posterior horn. It's not feel. It didn't feel the anterior. It's only in the middle. Okay. All the answers are incorrect. I am completely.
So you failed the test, Gustavo.
Only E. Oh, yes, E is correct.
During an examination at 16 weeks of age, the corpus callosum can be identified in a coronal plane at the level of the caudal nuclei, in a coronal plane at the level of the cerebellum. It is impossible to identify the corpus callosum before 20 weeks. B, the demonstration of bilateral ventriculomegaly.
By the demonstration of bilateral.
By the demonstration. A.
Okay.
By ultrasound, the most visible brain structure at 7 weeks of pregnancy are the lateral ventricles, the third ventricle, the rhomboencephalic vesicle, the calvarium. At 7 weeks, it is difficult to identify the brain structures. Very good. The views used for the basic examination of the brain include A. Only axial planes. B. Transventricular and transthalamic planes. C. Transventricular, transthalamic and transcerebellar planes. D. Orthogonal planes. A and C are correct, B and D are correct. So it's the basic examination. Very good. Usually at 15 weeks, the fourth ventricle and the cisterna magna appear connected. Is it true or false? True. We saw it today.
How much you angulate your probe or how much you go down and up. But it's always will find the connection. It is not a true connection because the wall is there.
Failure to demonstrate fluid in the posterior fossa at 13 weeks is usually associated with Chiari 1 malformation, Chiari 2 malformation, closed neural tube defect, open neural tube defect. All the answers are correct. I would say D for sure, and
Close? Why close?
close not.
No. B and D.
B and D.
B and D.
Yes, I don't know what I write, but it's B and D.
No.
During a transabdominal examination at 16 weeks of age, one of the cerebellar hemispheres is difficult to visualize. So 16 weeks. This is usually due to technical problems and the transvaginal approach is indicated. The whole cerebellum is not yet well developed and a repeated examination at 20 weeks is indicated. Cerebellar hemihypoplasia is usually caused by a fetal insult. Cerebellar hemihypoplasia is usually a genetic condition and amniocentesis is indicated. All the answers are incorrect.
Cerebellum.
Fetal insult.
Cerebellum. 16.
Because
I should tell my daughter that she didn't write the question as I should. My daughter didn't do it well.
Cerebellum at the age of amniocentesis, we should always see the cerebellum. So
Yeah.
if we don't see,
fetal insult.
so it should be C.
Yeah.
Okay.
We learned something.
Vermis rotation needs to be complete by 18 weeks of gestation, by 22 weeks of gestation, by 24 weeks of gestation. If the vermis appears normal, it may remain rotated until the third trimester.
if Gustavo wrote the question, it is definitely
Yeah.
But you show a case.
Normal.
Normal.
Okay. If a fetus with Joubert syndrome, in a fetus with Joubert syndrome, A, the cerebellar hemisphere are usually close one to the other. B, other malformations are always present. C, nystagmus may be demonstrated during the third trimester. D, the cerebellar hemisphere are usually separated.
Now let's see. Hey, who say A? B, A again, A, B,
No.
C, D.
Yes, C could be possible, but I would say A.
And there are people who have no opinion. And it's quite frustrating because we have been killing ourselves giving direction. You don't collaborate, but actually the boss is always right. And Katia is the boss.
Yes.
Eh?
Well, though,
Tahat. Usually.
can you see, because sometimes you can even see at ultrasound the molar tooth.
Yes.
Yes.
But the more has nothing to do with the position.
I know.
Yeah. But
Characteristic of Joubert, the hemispheres touch one with the other and not separate.
later on.
Eh?
But if they were like this, we'll never see them. But they have an abnormal possible cluster more or less.
In some cases, these are the hemispheres, instead of being like that, are a little bit like that, but always they touch in the midline. This is characteristic of Joubert.
touch in the middle, but they are separated posteriorly.
No.
So there is a gap.
There's no gap. In Joubert, there's no gap.
Okay, we carry on. A small transcerebellar diameter may help differentiate between cerebellar hypoplasia and rhomboencephalon synapses.
False.
Lamas falls onto that. It could be
Both.
both.
Well, I mean,
Both.
No.
they are, in both cases, the transcerebellar diameter is reduced, but in rhomboencephalosynapses you don't see the vermis because there are only.
No, it may help between.
Dimension.
It can be differentiated. In both of them, it is small.
Well, we'll say it's A or B. We'll say A.
A.
True.
No.
No here. B.
Thank you.
Hey.
And the other questions are, because we had also questions relative to the Paulina. We also had the questions relative to the other lectures, or not?
The other lectures will be available on CME class.
On the platform. Okay.
CME.
Okay. So, thank you very much. And I would say I enjoyed it a lot. I hope that's the same for you. It was a beautiful location. Thanks to the staff who has been very helpful. And I wish you a very safe trip back home. And we hope to see you soon somewhere, maybe at the World Congress in Rome or somewhere else.
If they have suggestions, they should write.